Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Getting Started Workshop for Beginners. Today's presentation will be recorded and sent out to all registered participants and also be posted on the Hub. As this is a workshop, we welcome your participation and interaction. We will have a Q&A portion throughout the presentation. You can type your questions into the question box on the webinar doc, or you are welcome to raise your hand to ask a question verbally. We are excited to share this time with you today. Now on to Valentina with Textile Exchange. Valentina?
Thank you so much, Rose, and hello. I want to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are all gathering on today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I also extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that are here today and joining us online today. My name is Valentina and I work with Textile Exchange as the Oceania ambassador and strategist, and I'm so pleased to welcome you all here today, both Textile Exchange members and also non-members. Textile Exchange is a global not-for-profit organisation driving positive impact on climate change across the fashion and textile industry. We guide a growing community of brands, manufacturers and farmers towards more purposeful production from the very start of the supply chain. By 2030, the goal is to guide the industry to achieve a 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions within the fibre and raw material production. The focus is holistic, it's interconnected, and accelerating the adoption of practices that improve the state of our water, soil health, and biodiversity as well. Today's workshop is focused on our corporate fibre and materials benchmark program. This is the largest peer-to-peer comparison initiative in the textiles industry, and it enables participating companies to measure, manage, and integrate a preferred fibre and materials strategy into their business, which is becoming more and more relevant every day. I'm so pleased to welcome our corporate fibre and materials benchmark team, Liesl Truscott and Prerna Pandley, to guide us through the program today. We also have a special guest in Amy Lowe. Based in Sydney, Australia, she is the brand and marketing director at Piping Hot, and she's going to talk to us about her experience in engaging with the program for her organisation. It's over to you now, Liesl, our program director at CFMB. Thank you.
Thank you, Valentina. Lovely, lovely welcome. And it's wonderful to be with this audience of New Zealanders and Australians and maybe others from around the region. So yes, welcome to today's session. As Valentina said, my name is Liesl Truscott. I'm the director of our benchmarking program. We've got an hour and a half together, which is wonderful. It feels a luxury to have a nice wide spread of time to be with you. Got a lot to get through, but we do want to make sure that we spend plenty of time together with questions and answers and discussion. So this is a workshop, it's not a webinar. So we are very open to people interrupting us, putting hands up. We'll definitely pause and stop at various parts of the program and seek out your questions. But honestly, if they come up for you at any time, please just type them into the Q&A or even raise your hand, and we'll ebb and flow with where you'd like to take this today. So I'm going to spend around 10 to 15 minutes giving you a little bit of context setting and just sort of grounding us in where we are with the corporate benchmark program. I'm looking forward to a Q&A back with Valentina, and as you now know, our special guest, Amy Lowe, will be sort of chatting about how things are with the benchmark program and going back and forth a little bit. And then we'll hand it over to Prerna, who will get us through some of the initial landing information into more of the logistics and practical sides of getting started with the benchmark. And yes, as I said, plenty of time for Q&A at the end and throughout. So the first thing I wanted to announce, which we're all very excited about, because it's always a huge piece of work that we always sort of sigh with relief when it's out, but always feel extremely proud of, is our Material Change Insights report for the previous year's program. This is now live. We had an intro conversation live with some of the leading companies and GreenBiz, one of our media collaborators, a little earlier this week, and that will be available soon if you didn't catch that one. And then, of course, we like to continue these conversations on the hub, which is where we go back and forth with various announcements and information and discussion. So hope you get to read the report. Lots and lots of information in there. So you probably heard these acronyms passed around a little bit for those that are kind of more familiar with our work at Textile Exchange. There's a CFMB, there's the MCI, there's always lots of acronyms. We are trying to step back and use those in more in a greater kind of sense of explanation. So we're not throwing acronyms around. So the Material Change Index is one of the outcomes of the Corporate Fibre and Materials Benchmark Program. And as I get more into some of the information in my slides, you'll see how this program is growing to accommodate different disclosure and reporting needs that are popping up more and more these days. I'm sure many of you have seen them. I know New Zealand and Australia, but I'm more familiar with the New Zealand ones as sort of jumping into more climate reporting and disclosure of ESG information. So yes, feel free to share more about that in the Q&A box, because I think these reporting requirements are starting to shape and dictate and what we like to think of with the benchmarking program for our industry is we can keep you ahead of the game a little bit and a deep sense of connection to some of this data. So it's the objective is around tier 4, as Valentina was saying. So it's tracking your progress, the industry progress towards more sustainable material sourcing. And as I said, sort of aligning with some of these more global efforts like the Sustainable Development Goals and a transition to a circular economy, and increasingly with the work that's going on around biodiversity in the next global biodiversity framework. Lots of exciting concepts and quest to find the right reporting indicators there that we're keeping abreast of, and we'll talk about a bit more. But just to sort of step back and say, sort of, where did this program come from? And in 2015, we launched our first pilot. That was really just a little bit of a testing of the waters. We had 57 companies that joined us in that context setting, framework building around what and how we should be reporting, sort of developing that first methodology. And then between 2016 and 2018, we ran the first few years of the program. And then in 2019, we launched the public-facing Material Change Index and the leaderboard that came along with that. And we've been using that framework over the last 3 years. It's starting to change a little bit, and as Valentina was saying, with our Climate Plus goals and sort of ramping up our ambition and, quite frankly, our urgency to make sure what we do is resulting in real impact and change. That is we're going through another review of the program, so things are starting to shift a little bit, and I'll talk a bit more about that. But you'll see this lovely green spike in 2020 when we launched our biodiversity benchmark, which involved a lot of collaboration, consultation, stakeholder engagement. And I know some of you were deeply involved in that preparation work, which was amazing. And I think that's really, really united us around the broader plus bit of our climate ambitions. And you'll see the more gentle curve around change between 2020 and 2021. This is our supplier pilot. that we know will take off soon, but we've been sort of managing expectations there. As you can see, everything's growing quite fast, and as a team, we're super excited and wanting to make sure that we're delivering the best and supporting you in the best possible way. So we're poising, or we're pivoting for more growth this year. But speaking of amazing companies, and we have, well, if we count icebreakers, I don't know if where the New Zealanders put Icebreaker now as a VF company, but obviously deeply rooted in New Zealand. We want to really, really thank Kathmandu, Piping Hot, Juliet Hogan, Icebreaker, and there was one more, Preena, you might have to remind me. Forever New, a brand new company that we're really excited about, that I forgot to write the name down. And of course, so thank you all of you, and hopefully more for joining our next class of 2022. We are very proud of this group of brands. And why do we benchmark? So we know it works. We're seeing this sort of ecosystem of benchmarking happening around us, with a very deep and progressive contribution by the World Benchmarking Alliance, of which Textile Exchange is a member. So there's if you like, a community of practice building up around benchmarking, around methodology, around how we interact with each other, and of course, reduce duplication and get the benefits out of what benchmarking has to offer. And I think we'll talk more about how society's expectations are changing all the time. You know, who would have thought, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago that we would be having such deep conversations around farming and recycled packaging and you know, the roots of our fashion and our textiles, as we are now quite comfortably. You know, we can put a picture of a sheep or a cotton farm on a presentation, and it'll be incredibly relevant for our industry. And that's, I think, increasing all the time as we think about origin of our fibers. And of course, benchmarking does create a little bit of competition. We like to think of that kind of tension between this race to the top for companies wanting to improve, to get better, to sort of set their own standards. And that obviously that broader context of the collaboration, we're in this together, and that sort of community that we want to promote through benchmarking as well. So when one company's doing something really well, then the opportunity there is for others to learn and to adopt, and for us all to go forward together faster. So there is always that little bit of tension with how we leverage competition there. But ultimately, it's an engagement tool. It's to be able to do things like this today, to be able to sort of talk about ambition, to talk about where we want to go, to be able to use this as a real tool for that growth and progress. And this is really just to sort of flash in front of you the fact that there are a lot of organizations that, you know, I do think are now starting to find more harmonization, reduce. This is one of the things I'm really excited to notice, that the competition that used to exist, I mean, let's face it, but even between, well, not even, but between, say, Textile Exchange and the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, or Better Cotton and Organic, or My BMP, you know, a lot of those, our culture was around, you know, we've got to be better, we've got to be the main ones, we've got to be the ones that kind of win. But it's maturing in that space. As we said, a bit of debate and healthy competition is really necessary to drive improvements, but to do that in a way where we all go forward together. We you know, there's enough space, there's enough need and urgency to find out how we all work together. And for those that are following the disclosure and reporting conversations, you'll know that there's some of these these networks and alliances building around GRI and SASB and others to sort of harmonize and share indicators and frankly make life a lot easier for you guys out there that are having to report to these different initiatives. They all hold value, but ultimately there's much more profound value if there's alignment, harmonization, efficiency, data sharing, and less burden on you, so you can go and do the work that's needed to be done. And we're taking that sort of more global ecosystem into our own way of working within textile exchanges, as Valentina mentioned a bit before, and looking at how our benchmarking platform can be the home to, or a one-stop shop, if you like, for a lot of these reporting requirements, because we do get good value out the other end that we need to use in different communities. So, for example, we run a couple of fiber challenges, and some of you will know and be part of them. We'll talk more about the Sustainable Cotton Challenge and the Recycled Polyester Challenge. It's a one-stop reporting shop, that's a new phrase, to come to the Corporate Fiber Materials Benchmarking Platform and be able to submit this data and have it go into those various subsectors for use. And tracking progress. And the big excitement is our new collaboration with the Fashion Pact, where, for those that know this organization, I think there's 70 or 80, maybe a few more companies that have become signatories to 3 pillars around climate, biodiversity, and oceans, which overlap enough with our ambitions at Textile Exchange to say, hey, you guys run a benchmarking platform, you're collecting data, you're analyzing it, you're putting out reports, how can we do that together? So this is the first year that we've taken our early work around biodiversity, where the Fashion Pact was very involved in that, into let's just pull all that reporting together under one place. And technology willing, and of course this is a little bit more technical, but the idea is that you can report in once, and if you push a button and want that data to go somewhere else, eventually that will happen as well. Lots to talk about the future of reporting harmonization, but just to let you know, this is really important for us because we know it's important for you. Now, I wanted to, and I'm not seeing any hands yet, but we will pause for breath soon. I know I'm flying through a lot of this information. I hope it's interesting. I am particularly excited about this visual here, which kind of just tells the story of how we're evolving and being more inclusive of this journey around developing a portfolio approach to materials, so that you and us all as organizations will know, what are some of the preferred options, and how do I start thinking about my company's needs and values and options that work best for my company, because there won't be a one size fits all. There won't be an absolute best. There won't even be a, quote unquote, sustainable option in its kind of absolute and static form, right? Everything's moving, changing, evolving, improving all the time. So we just have to live with that degree of flux. But we can build a portfolio around that, and you can see on the left here, the options that we've identified under cotton, cashmere, wool, man-made cellulosics, the synthetic fibers, polyester, polyamide. There are others, and for some companies like a Country Road that might be using a lot of wool, or another company that might be using a lot of sort of synthetics around swimwear or outdoor wear. You'll mix and match your material needs, your priorities with where you want to start. But ultimately, the idea is to look at your portfolio holistically. And then that gives us, once we have volumes around this, or you have your volumes around materials, you'll be able to set targets for improvement. We'll be able to model, and I use the word model very, very, with very sort of strong, bold letters, outcomes and impacts. We're getting better at that all the time with the more precise data that we can get. We do use industry averages. We collaborate with the Sustainable Apparel Coalition and use the Higg Index. Once again, we want harmonization, and we want kind of information that is comparable, and that's improving all the time. But this is where we're moving to this sort of landscape approach on the map here. So it's not only the materials you source, the preferred options, but where in the world are these materials located? Where are they being cultivated, grown? Where are the forests? Because I need to know, whether I'm piping hot or whatever, what is my exposure to risk, and ultimately, how can I be most helpful in this region, in this landscape? Those are big questions. It's very easy for me to sit here and say that, but I don't underestimate the complexity of that, the moving around of supply bases. We know there's a lot of moving parts to consider. But if we kind of step back and think, what we need to do in this world to keep it resilient, to build a future that our industry and our children's future is all about, it's really about sort of thinking very, very differently about our relationship with the land and with people in our supply chain. Sorry, that went a little bit more deep and meaningful than I had anticipated there, but I think, I'm talking to an audience that I think understands that. So in light of that shifting narrative, we have an evolving framework, and benchmarking is all about continuous improvement, not just for you as a company, but for us as an organization, for the program. This is very much an iterative feedback mechanism with you guys that are using the benchmark, as well as the experts and other stakeholders that are contributing. So we don't do this in a darkened room where we think, well, let's add something here, or we do this very much with our finger to the breeze and deep conversations with everybody. And I think the main thing to point out at this point is, this stage, is that you can see how we've incorporated other modules. You can see biodiversity in there, climate and oceans, that mirror the needs of the Fashion Pact. These are entirely optional, but we do make them open access. So it's not just Fashion Pact companies that have access to these new modules. But the bits in blue, if you like, and I know many of you are very new to the program, so comparing with how it used to be won't be very helpful for you. But around materials, we've definitely incorporated circularity, with the belief that that's got to be a firm component of any material strategy, is how we reduce, how we look at recycled content, how we look at alternative business models. This goes into a lot more depth. The sort of click down into the different levels of question sets, and I'm just sharing that piece with you. I think there's lots more opportunities to engage on the deeper level of logistics here, but just to give you a very high level, as I said before, linking into these challenges is super important for us, because it's often the first step in the door, or one of the most important steps for a company, is to sign up to one of these challenges. If you do sign up to a challenge and you really don't want to benchmark just yet, that's entirely your choice. We really look at this as the journey, and take you as a community member where you're ready to start and want to be most active. So I'm going to pause for breath there. That was a lot of information. I think shifting gears into more of a chat with Valentina and Amy might be a welcome pause for you. But if there's any questions or comments or at this point, please do lead the way. The first question's always the hardest to ask. If not, maybe back to you, Valentina, to sort of take us into the fireside chat.
Thank you so much, Liesl. It's always really inspiring to hear you talk so eloquently about the program. There's a lot of detail there, and it's really, yeah, just such a great way to kind of take a dive into it. So thank you. I am, yeah, excited to have a conversation with Amy from Piping Hot. So welcome, Amy, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Similarly, if there are, as Liesl mentioned today, there are opportunities for you to, if you want to raise your hand to ask any questions along the way, please do. An interactive session is really, really great for us as well on this side, and no question is ever a bad question. So please go ahead. And in saying that, Amy, it'd be really great to hear just some background in terms of, your work that you're doing at Piping Hot and your role, as well as kind of sharing a little bit about the mission and the vision of Piping Hot.
Yeah, sure. So I am working for Piping Hot. We're an Australian surf brand. Many Australians should be familiar with it. We're on we basically have a vision to create global solutions for clean oceans. And we're on a mission to make sustainability affordable for families and protect oceans. When it comes to materiality, because I think that's particularly relevant for this audience, we've kind of looked at, I guess, the biggest threats to the ocean being pollution, water security, but also climate, and then assess the appropriate materials where we can improve our environmental impact through the selection of materials. So, since 2018 is when we kind of started that journey. And right now we've eliminated virgin polyester from our supply chain. We have all of our materials recyclable, biodegradable, or renewable. And we have like a really clear kind of low impact material framework that we're working, that we've basically committed to across every single product that we produce.
And that is just no small feat. I know that for, many, many years, you and your team have worked really closely, including, from your sustainability design product, you've worked really interconnectedly and holistically with your heads down over the last few years to, I guess, design that strategy and really design in those results. Can you share a little bit about why you've engaged in the Corporate Fibre and Materials Benchmark program? I know that you've participated for 3 years running. So yeah, if you can share why.
Yeah, there's probably quite a few reasons. One is like we are a fairly small company. We have very ambitious goals, and we really value having, I guess, a really clear picture of where we sit in the marketplace and understanding, are we actually doing the right things? What's our impact? There's a component of our overall sustainability framework which focuses on innovation and scale. The affordability piece is really crucial to where we see our greatest impact, and to be able to understand, I guess, to participate, to be able to see our results reflected in a global level gives us a good gauge of where the gaps are and where we need to kind of focus our attention. We're a very small company, and so the other part of it that is really valuable is actually having, I guess, that third-party feedback, an independent view of where are we.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that as well. I mean, one of the key things that I always talk about when people talk about sustainability within our industry is I think it's a real opportunity to definitely be creative and think outside the box, but it is also so important to color inside the lines sometimes. And that's for, benchmarking purposes, being able to utilize data to make really considered decisions. And then also for that collective impact piece that Liesl was talking about so nicely before. I guess, what's some of the core value that you've received from engaging in the program so far?
There's actually been a lot of different things. I would say, like, from the first aspect, look, there's no way that we would have the resources internally to be able to produce the information that we get from actually the scorecard and the indices that are provided. So just having that visibility on the work that we've already done is actually really valuable. I think participating forces us to actually collate the data that's required. And, you know, in relation to our day-to-day, it can be very easy to think, yep, we'll just measure it. Yep, we're kind of on track. But when you actually have to fill in all the boxes and get everything to a certain deadline, I think that is also has some merit for us anyway. And then I think particularly because between 2019 and 2020, we were recognised as being a big mover. And that was a really kind of great feedback for our entire team to be able to understand that what we had achieved within a year in terms of our commitments to sustainable materials was recognised within the industry as something that was not an easy feat. And when you're in the trenches and you're making those decisions and it just feels like it's maybe not enough, having that external validation that, do you know what, we're actually doing something that is not the norm, was kind of exactly the motivation that the broader team for our business really needed.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think, you know, that kind of intersecting with, you know, your original, I guess, brand mission and vision, the slogan is, you know, for clean oceans and to create a global solution for clean oceans. Lisa, I think maybe this would be a really good one for you. Why do you think it's important for a brand to have, you know, a bit of a mission and vision purpose when it comes to the intersection of, you know, engaging in, I guess, the corporate fiber and materials benchmark?
Yeah, I'm just really enjoying Amy's comments. So that just feels so powerful, Amy, and we have obviously closely followed your journey, particularly over the past 3 years, and it is really satisfying that there's a role that the benchmarking plays to kind of reinforce the direction that you're traveling and your, I mean, speaking of ambition and vision, you know, in 2019 you and probably before, but we were very aware of that ambition, and just to see how you have been able to fulfill that over the last 3 years, you know, you certainly are a poster child for how this can work. And I think to answer your question, Valentina, it's got to start with that vision, that ambition, that owning of that kind of direction that the company's going to go. You know, every company has a slightly different approach to ambition. I often hear companies, quite big companies, you know, say that we have a vision for something, but we don't know how we're going to get there. But by actually putting it in the public domain or really owning that commitment to a vision means that you've got to get there. And I think that leads me into my sort of second component. You know, the vision, the ambition is the starting point. It's an incredible stake in the ground. But then it's the action, and I think that's the evolution that we're definitely seeing in the world now, is how to get, you know, we're seeing it with COP, the climate COP and other areas. We've got to get from commitment to action to impact. So it doesn't stop with ambition and vision, but it's certainly got to be that starting point.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also it's really, really good to have that ambition and, you know, but then the next part is also the adoption of that ambition within the team to be able to develop or co-create goals, and then also to drive those goals throughout the team. Amy, how many team members have you had to kind of, you know, work within the organization to implement the program successfully, and what was the impact that's had on engaging those team members?
So in terms of the benchmark, I suppose primarily it's a sustainability manager and myself, but we've also engaged our production team to be able to source data, and our designers as well. There's a variety of different stakeholders, I suppose. We really try and bring everyone along with us, and so they're kind of the key team members to contribute to the benchmarking process, and then overall, everyone in our business has a KPI that's related to our vision and our mission. So it's very clear when we get this response and kind of have this kind of the scorecard, we can everyone takes something slightly different from it.
Yeah, I guess you can kind of see those results translate and become real. And so that really drives that extra motivation. Sorry, Liesl, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just actually agreeing with you, Valentina, and Amy around the importance of capacity building. So, you know, that kind of, that's the key to getting those dots to join between setting the ambition and the vision and getting that sort of impact is kind of driving that capacity building, the training, the roles within the team, and making sure that it's resourced, right? You know, we're all working incredibly hard in our day jobs, and sustainability is something that you know, we're hearing in all parts of the world now, aren't we? As just so key. So we're taken seriously now as a kind of thing, and roles are being elevated. So resourcing and Valentina, while I've got the mic off, there are a few questions coming through Q&A that you might like to sort of direct around a bit, just to point there.
Yeah, thank you. I just have been seeing them come through. Thanks so much for the prompt. Amy, there's a question here specifically for you around giving kind of like more of an example around tough or nuanced decisions that your brand has had to make in regards to how the data or the statistics that come from being engaged in the program helped or to shape or direct you in the right direction when making those decisions?
Yeah, sure. I guess for us, recycled polyester was like a no-brainer in terms of moving away from virgin polyester. So that's kind of was our starting point. But when it came to cotton, we really needed to, there's so many options in terms of what type of cotton was going to be the right one for our sustainability framework. And I think in understanding how much cotton we actually source, where we were currently sourcing it, and then also what are the different measures and frameworks that we could look at to be able to determine our sourcing strategy. For us, we've made the decision that water and saving water is kind of a priority, and as well as circularity, which is why we focus on recycled cotton. But it was really an interesting process with varied data points that come out of, okay, so what is the impact of your current cotton consumption, and how could we adjust that? What are the various different programs that we could look at? And whilst it wasn't primarily based on the data that was provided through this, it actually gave some tangible statistics about our current, like where we started from, and then how we're able to progress from year to year.
And I think, you know, with that, I think one of the other kind of key questions that people or, you know, individuals working in this space might also ask before engaging in the program is kind of like, how much time does this take? So, you know, you've been involved in the program 3 years in a row. Was the cadence the same each year? And, you know, how much did you see yourself kind of accelerate into more preferred fibers year on year?
Well, I'm pleased to say that our systems internally have improved. And so we're better at actually measuring the information throughout the year. We've also been better at actually documenting our policies. You know, typically in our business in the past, we would kind of have an internal policy, but wasn't documented. It wasn't necessarily aligned to the SDGs or any other kind of methodology. And I think that one of the things that the benchmark kind of highlighted was, okay, how are you making these decisions? Or like, what is actually, what are you measuring yourself against? So in terms of time, the first year, it was a mess because it was all manually produced, like just trying to work out how many, you know, what did we make? What materials were they made of? What was the weight of each of these things? And then the kind of more crucial part was actually vetting that, making sure that the spreadsheet wasn't wrong, that we actually had some further checkpoints so that we weren't incorrectly reporting. And then we were really vague on a lot of reasoning behind why we were doing certain things. So a lot of the answers around integration into strategy were like, we have a bit of an idea, but we don't really know. So that was very light. As we've progressed, we've been able to get more efficient at how we answer the questions, but also those data points are really crucial to be able to make it actually relatively efficient in terms of how we respond.
Yeah, and I think it's a really it's just kind of, it's such a big learning curve. And, for anyone here, you can see Liesl and Prona, that's the team that you'll be working with, guiding you through that journey. So although it might be messy, it won't be too scary.
Yeah. I should just say as well that, like, in terms of the material, our fibre use, we collated it not just for this, but also for our impact report, our internal reporting. So there are a number of other uses and reasons why we would want to have that information. Submitting it for the benchmark was an additional use because it gave us different information and then ranked us globally. So we could kind of, I guess, focus on the areas where we needed to improve, but also celebrate those areas where we were seen as being in that kind of maturing or leader space.
Yeah, and actually my next question for you, Amy, obviously, you kind of sit in the marketing director role, but you've got so much of a touch point when it comes to sustainability as well, and really driving those as a purpose kind of led brand. How would you say that your, communications marketing team have been able to utilize the data that's come out of this program to storytell, but then report effectively?
So I think that we primarily use this as an internal tool to be able to reference and kind of progress our own kind of roadmap and our ambitions. We've certainly been able to use it thanks to, yourself and Liesl, and being able, like, particularly when we made it into that like big mover section, like there was some benefit for us to be able to talk more widely about what we were able to achieve. I'm not sure whether that answers the question, but in terms of the actual data points, we've also been able to share those through our social media. There are some really clear, easily relatable equivalences that I think that can be really powerful messages for consumers as well. So, when you talk about carbon emissions and the significant amounts of water that are being saved, that are documented through the benchmark, I think that's really valuable too.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I wanted to ask that question is because there's a lot, going on now, particularly within, in our market here in Australia and over in New Zealand, around, ensuring that, when claims are made, they're substantiated, and this actually really provides validation around that, which is a really great outcome from the program when we're thinking about brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we were talking to Liesl earlier, and like the data points that are more consumer related are actually getting richer and richer when you look at the scoreboard that you provided to the business. So it's not just what's on the leaderboard that you can see publicly, but there's kind of quite granular data that you can see exactly what the methodology is that's kind of produced that information, and then how it translates in terms of direct transition. And interestingly, it's against two, I think, Liesl, you might correct me, but there's a performance review. I guess you can look at last year to this year, like what progress you've made from year to year, but also how do you perform against like-minded businesses, so compared to the norm. So there's actually value in both of those because it's great to be able to see that as a business or a brand, we've been able to progress from one year to the next. But it's also like, actually, maybe we're not progressing enough because the market has moved really fast, or alternatively within that shift, which we might think is just, well, that's what our goal was. it might actually be seen as quite progressive in the broader piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's I mean the technology is improving too with digital interactivity. So the scorecards, and we'll talk a bit more about them a bit later, I think, but have evolved. They have become sort of more sophisticated, I think, and as those data points become more kind of mainstreamed or urgent to understand that impact, that kind of evolution from that we're all going through, to be able to just quantify materials, to be able to track impact. It's very much work in progress, and I think it's kind of informed by improved methodology, which is something that, I think, Amy, you and companies that are using our program can rest quite confidently in, that we're keeping up and helping sort of form that harmonization or alignment with the best available data out there. And I think eventually, we'll probably look back on what we're doing today, well, and, probably not too long in the future, and we would have come even more precise with data. I think life cycle assessment is moving towards more of a regional or supply chain level granularity, things that we just simply can't do today. But to get there, we have to go through, as you said, the sort of some of the messiness, some of the unknown, because that is how you build that knowledge and bring that community with you. So I love what you've just said about that interconnectivity. Thanks.
Yeah, well, the other one that's kind of come through more, I think, in the latest scorecard is the SDGs. Mm-hmm. And the SDGs, because they're so integrated, it may not be as obvious like which materials or like how the holistic picture of your material strategy actually integrates with the SDGs. And so I found that was actually quite fascinating as well.
Yeah, I think the SDGs have been an interesting one for our industry, and probably others. Be interested to know what the audience think, with how far to go with that alignment, and sort of, is it about just, saying, well, I'm doing this and it kind of aligns with SDG 12 or what have you, or, or how do I get to that next level of granulation and use the SDGs possibly a bit more, deeply or strategically. And I think we're still maturing in that space, but I do think they are so important to come back to as that North Star, because they are so holistic, and that gives it the complexity, but also the kind of, the growing recognition that all this has to be considered in its entirety. So,
I just wanted to quickly make sure we're okay for time. I just wanted to get to one question here for you, Amy, which was, in the case of starting the journey in the benchmarking, who was that within your team?
For the benchmarking, that was me. I really wanted to, I guess, getting a really clear picture of where we are allows us to be able to know how do we define and measure ourselves for the future. So that was kind of a big component. The other outcome that I don't think I've really spoken about is that I think it is a really effective tool for us to kind of report back on our performance in terms of to the leadership team and to our board. Again, the value is that it's independently kind of developed, so it's not me just saying, look, here's the information and this is what the impact is. And as I said before, I think that there's so much that you can kind of reference. It's, we have this global ambition and we want to know where we sit when we compare ourselves to a Patagonia, to Adidas, to all these different companies that are kind of seen as being quite progressive. And when we look at it in terms of what our material strategy is, we're not that, like, we've got some room to move, but we're not that far behind. And being able to say that with a strong methodology behind it, with some kind of, I guess, that independent voice was a really powerful thing at various points, because when we're asked to be ambitious about where the brand should sit in sustainability, and then you just say, well, we think we're doing well. Yeah, you know, like our customers like it. You know, we get some good response on social media, and, you know, we're doing okay. It's like a little bit different to actually, here are 200 companies around the world who have made very clear statements around sustainability and are actually seen and referenced all the time as like the leaders within the sustainability, fashion sustainability. To kind of know where you sit in relation to them is actually also really valuable.
Thank you. Just from a timing perspective also, I wanted to ask, what are the main pieces of advice before jumping into participating in the benchmarking program?
I mean, I think it's really helpful to kind of, I know in the second part of it, we'll soon go step through some of the different, I guess, technical aspects of the benchmark. I think give yourself some time, make sure you've kind of like just, I guess, take it a little bit at a time. Don't try and do it all on the last day, because it's not going to happen. And from our experience, if you don't have it, just say, we don't have it. Like, don't try and produce it and force yourself to kind of perform really highly. Like, actually part of where our value has been is, if this is where it's at, like, we just need to take a note and make sure that next year it's better. So the data point is probably the trickier thing to be able to access and verify. But outside of that, just go through and see, like, make sure you've got the right stakeholders to understand where you can get that information from. But if you're not there, you're not there. And that's, I think, okay.
Yeah. And Liesl, how about yourself? What would your main recommendations be?
Yeah, once again, I mean, it's wonderful having Amy say this, because it's fantastic coming from a company. I couldn't agree more with everything Amy said around, you know, really using this as a tool to build the capacity within the organization to understand what the data points are and how they really resonate with the company and are useful. I think it's great having Amy sort of represent a smaller company, because I think there's always that expectation, and, you know, arguably so, that some of the bigger companies are more resourced. They have special people that are filling in data things all the time. So you've got you know, as a smaller company, not having access to that much staff makes it feel more of a time effort. And what we often say to smaller companies is that the opportunities to sort of take something that you're already possibly doing into something that's a little bit more structured. And as Amy said, being able to sort of document some of these things that are just part of what you do, you know, arguably that shouldn't be necessary. But then as the organization grows and as you sort of want to come back to your North Star, we often hear from smaller companies that actually it is quite useful, and it's a gathering of people around a topic, and it's the kind of the journey, it's the means to the end as much as it is sort of getting to the end that I think is where the real value is. And then the other thing, as Amy says, to be able to, for us, it's a pleasure, and it's also a huge responsibility that we don't take lightly at Textile Exchange, to be able to, you know, validate the results, to be able to have that back and forth with the company during the review phase. We never close an answer out or change it without that dialogue back and forth with the company. So on both sides, there's a learning and an agreement. And I think, Amy, that was beautifully said. If you're not there yet, don't bust a gut. Don't feel like that's a reflection of your you know, your quality. It's really about how you grow and expand and mature in those areas that's the real value. So yeah, using the benchmark as a way more than a box ticking exercise, I hope, and speaking to people like Amy, I think really pays off. And it can take a couple of years to get to that place. But I think, yeah, the last thing to just once again amplify what Amy said is that this data is needed in so many places now. You know, we might be asking for material volumes, but it's really going to be helpful for you in so many other ways to know what you're sourcing and potentially where you're sourcing, and be ahead of some of the regulations and requirements as well.
Yeah, perfect. And then also, I actually just wanted to, lean back into journeys, because this workshop is a bit of a journey, and I'm conscious that we are going over time here. But I really just, wanted to thank Amy for her time, and everyone. If you are a Textile Exchange member, you can actually find Amy on the Hub, which is our digital community platform. You just kind of register and find her and add her as a contact, and see the amazing work that she's doing and connect with her there. But yeah, thank you so much again, Amy, for joining us today and for participating in the program and sharing all of your thoughts to our wonderful audience.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. That was super fun. And thanks everybody for their questions. It's really helped bring the conversation to life. And on this point, I'm going to hand you over to Preena Pandey.
Thank you. Thank you, Valentina, Amy, and Lisa. You guys are amazing. And thank you for that inspiring and great conversation. And thank you once again, Amy, for your valuable feedback. So picking it up from where Lisa left, it was a very clear overview of the corporate benchmark program and the growing importance of benchmarking. I would like to say hello to everyone once again, and I want to take you through the Material Change Index survey, a little bit of the overview, along with the guidance and the support available. In the next slide, to begin with, here is the annual benchmark cycle, or the 2022 timeline. So as many of you may know, we have just launched the 2022 survey. The current survey submission period is open from Tuesday, June 21st, that's from last week, to Friday, September 2nd. So participating companies have about 12 weeks to submit the survey. During this time, companies start to fill out the survey and avail us survey support services, such as these getting started workshops or drop-in clinics that we run throughout in summer, that is in the month of July and August, just in order to ensure that benchmark practitioners are fully supported throughout their submission phase. Once the submission period closes in September and all participating companies have submitted their survey, the corporate benchmark team undergoes the validation phase, which is the second one on the list on your screens. And the corporate benchmark team undergoes this validation for all submitted surveys to check for consistency, accuracy, evidence, etc. Please note that this is not an audit, but a review of the information and the data that the companies have submitted to us through the survey. Then we enter into an analysis phase to prepare the results in January and February. And in March, we hit the reporting phase when we generate confidential scorecards that Amy spoke to you about, that each participating company receives. And we also do a rigorous analysis of the aggregated data for the industry insights, such as our MCI leaderboard, impacts dashboard, and annual insights report that Liesl will share some more information at the end of this presentation. Now I want to, in the next slide, I want you to familiarize with the benchmarking platform, and I would love to walk you through the look and the feel of the survey itself. Since this session is for beginners and new practitioners, I assume most of you are sort of new to the ProBench platform. This platform is called ProBench and is managed in partnership with our developer 73-bit. 73-bit creates platforms for many impactful benchmark programs, including the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment, access to nutrition index, and business in the community, etc. This platform also houses the corporate benchmarks Material Change Index survey that we are talking about today. It is important to mention that the platform is fully secure and we provide access only to benchmark practitioners. And in common day-to-day lives, we call it the CFMB portal, and CFMB stands for Corporate Fiber Materials Benchmark Program, which obviously houses our benchmark survey. In the next slide. So if you're a company interested to benchmark, and we hope you are, to get started on the CFMB portal, the first step is to register to the CFMB portal by clicking onto register as a new participant as indicated on the screen, which directs you to a short registration form seeking your company and contact details, survey category, etc. And once we receive your registration, we activate your access within 48 hours. In case your company is already benchmarking with us, but you're a new practitioner, you can still create an access to the CFMB portal and by logging back in, or if you have forgotten password, there is a link to reset your password, as you can see on your screen. I also want to mention that for new companies, to new companies, I want to mention that we do grant access to up to 3 to 4 users per company. So do let us know if you need any additional access for your colleagues into the secure platform, and we are very happy to help. In the next slide, taking you through a little bit on how the landing of the portal or the benchmark portal looks like. Once you log in, the landing page will look somewhat like this. There is a generic announcement section on the top where you will find all the relevant information for the current benchmarking period. And to find the current survey, you can scroll down a bit to surveys and scorecards section as indicated on the screen on the right. And under the new tab, you will want to click the relevant 2022 survey. For example, here we have indicated the brand retailer MCI survey 2022. If you have not yet started the current year survey, this will be under the new tab. But once you begin your survey, it will move onto the open tab to indicate that you have started completing the survey. In the next slide. Now, before I dive deeper into the survey and take you through a demonstration, I want to share about different benchmark options that are available. That is, are there different ways to complete the survey? And the answer is absolutely yes. There are 3 different options to choose from depending on many factors such as participants' willingness, available resources, level of experience, information or data available to submit the survey, and so on. And a lot of these Amy talked to in the beginning of the presentation today. So option 1 is the MCI full survey. For an holistic overview of your efforts, to receive a complete scorecard and to qualify for our overall material change index, companies should complete under the full survey option, they should complete business integration module, the circularity module, and the materials portfolio, along with materials impact area. And I think Liesl took us through that beautiful framework at the beginning of the presentation, and we can bring it back for you in case you have any questions later in the Q&A section. For companies that are not yet ready or do not feel ready for the entire survey, there's also another option, and that's called the modular one for those that prefer to focus on a limited number of materials or modules. And for this option, participants are required to complete 1 or more of any of the modules that are available. So for example, in the business integration section, if you are okay to complete strategy and circularity, or strategy or only circularity, either you're free to choose that combination. And also you can select any number of materials portfolio modules that you may want to complete for the current year. So participants also wanting to take part in the biodiversity benchmark, which is fully integrated this year into the MCI survey, can also choose the modular approach. There's also a third option called the progress tracker. And this option is more of a light touch, which allows participants to submit material uptake targets and volumetric data. And this is very useful. And this option allows for progress tracking against targets and specifically accommodates companies that have signed up for fiber challenges. For example, the 2025 Sustainable Cotton Challenge or the 2025 Recycled Polyester Challenge, then this is your minimum requirement to go to. Now, I know that is a lot of information, but choosing which combination you want to go through is not so difficult as it sounds, and we will now see it through a demonstration. In the next slide. So yeah, here is a glimpse of how a new 2022 survey will look like when you open it fresh. I know it looks simple, and this is because the survey is built to pick your selections and open the relevant modules for you to complete. And we'll take you through this, but just to quickly share that this is basically driven by a selection of the benchmark options that we spoke about earlier, and also the materials portfolio that we will speak in the next few minutes. In the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the mandatory questions. This section is definitely mandatory for all the participants, because it's more about the terms and policies that we expect all the participants to read and be clear with and understand. There's also benchmark options that I will take you once again in depth through, which is essential for companies to sort of select at the beginning of the survey. So that drives what are the modules that will open up for you, and also the company profile information that we collect from companies. So these three are the mandatory subsections under the mandatory question. And in the next slide, now, as I promised, we will go through a little bit of a demonstration on how can you choose the benchmark options, which will sort of determine how your survey will look like, or which will be the relevant modules that will open up for you in your survey. You can choose, as you can see on the screen, you can choose from the 3 surveys options that we explained before, the MCI full survey, or the modular, or the progress tracker. And here I will take an example of, for example, the combination that you see on your screen, the MCI full survey, choosing biodiversity, and probably being a signatory of the 2025 Sustainable Cotton Challenge. For example, I'm a sustainability manager of a company new to the CFMB program. Of course, I'm excited about the journey, but also want to complete the survey in this combination. That is, I want to get a comprehensive overview of my performance or efforts through selecting the MCI full survey. I also want to explore the biodiversity questions and see where my company is at or where we can grow. And I'm also a signatory to the Sustainable Cotton Challenge. So this would be the combination. And moving on to the next slide. Now you can see that the relevant sections have opened up depending on what you've selected in the benchmark options section. That is, you will have to complete business integration section, materials modules, and circularity and impact modules. And materials balance sheet is something that all participants complete irrespective of your survey options, because this is sort of a comprehensive overview of the uptake of your materials. We recommend you select as many materials as possible in the materials balance sheet, and we will also take you through that in a little bit. Now, depending on which materials you choose, for example, if you're a cotton t-shirt company, you can select only cotton. But if you're a multi-brand company and use various fibers and materials, you select as many materials as you can, and that will drive this selection that we'll see in the next slide. Thank you. So this is what I was talking about, the materials balance sheet. Depending on the fiber and materials that are relevant to your company's portfolio, you will select as many as you can, and this will drive the next set of sections that will open up in your survey. So the first one was about the benchmark options, and the second one is about what are the materials in your portfolio that will drive your survey and sections for you to complete. In the next slide, I did not want to get through the bits and pieces of the materials balance sheet because it can be a session in itself, and we will be conducting a dedicated drop-in session in July for the materials balance sheet. But to continue, what are the remaining sections that you would have to complete as a participant? Once you complete your volumetric data in the materials balance sheet, we can see that for an MCI full survey, the scenario that we picked up, you will have to complete the sections highlighted in orange there. That is the materials modules. Once again, you select as many fibers and materials that your company uses under the materials modules. There's also a compulsory section to complete the circularity module. And this is once again relevant to if you are selecting the MCI full survey. In case you were going for another option, that is a modular one, then you would have the choice to either complete any of these sections or to complete any of the sections that are more relevant to you and leave out the rest. Once again, impact modules, the materials impact modules is compulsory for anybody who chooses the full MCI in order to get the complete score. But other modules such as the biodiversity, climate, and oceans are optional. But we do encourage participants to complete as many as possible for a comprehensive overview of their efforts and a complete scorecard, obviously. In this submission section, it is the last one, but not the least, as we request a sign off from a senior member of your team to ensure completion, robustness, and credibility of the information that you're submitting as a company. And yeah, that's a little bit walk through how the survey looks and what are the different components. Once again, as I mentioned, this was an example of a company choosing to do the full MCI. But in case a company is ready just to do any specific modules, then you can opt for modular option, where you can pick and choose whichever sections you want to complete. In the next slide, I also want to take you through a little bit of a guidance and support that's available during the submission period that we spoke about. And in the next slide, thank you. We are excited to share that we have added plenty of guidance and resources such as definitions, links, etc., to help your company complete the survey. The platform has inbuilt guidance. There is, as you see on your screen, there's a collapsible guidance highlighted there in green. With the help of the drop-down arrow, you can glance at the guidance and definitions, links, etc., available to that specific section. And this guidance section is available in each and every section embedded in the survey. There's also hover definitions throughout the survey questions, as you see is indicated on the screen. With the underlined words, if you hover over them, you can find the meaning and the definitions of that specific terminology. There's also a green question mark on the right side of the screen, as you see, which explains what the question implies or what is it asking for. We hope you find these useful and handy while you are completing your benchmark survey. In the next slide, we have also created a full suite of guides for you to find complete guidance and information about our survey methodology and more. And these are available on our website. And we also have this link that we will link on these slides available to you as a follow-up to this webinar. That's it for me in terms of taking you through how the survey sort of evolves depending on your questions. I just wanted to sort of remind that the survey, once again, is built in such a way that it caters to different needs, and you can select different options depending on where you feel are comfortable in the journey. And we do have plenty of guidance and support throughout. I will also remind you about our drop-in clinics and dates at the end of this presentation. But passing it over to you, Liesl, to take us through the benefits of taking part.
Thank you, Prina, and I hope everybody could keep up with the whirlwind tour. There's lots of moving parts, as Prina and I realize when we start talking about them, but Prina, I think you did an amazing job of laying that out quite clearly. And as I hope everybody got the full message, we are here to support, we are here to be a buddy, you know, and we're really also interested in any other ways that you would like to connect as a community. You've got Valentina, you've got some champions like Amy at Piping Hot. So I think this is all about supporting each other, and that, as we keep saying, the journey, that's the part that really matters. So yes, I think that's a little bit of a window into what's required and what the technology looks like and the getting started. And now I'm going to talk about what you get back in return, which is really important too. So every company that takes part will get a scorecard, and there's various examples of those that are also available online, and Prina's got some links there that you can see an example of a scorecard that we released just for the first time last year, which is what we call the sector scorecard. So these, for you as a company, your scorecard is confidential. It's about your results. Amy alluded to the opportunity to benchmark your company against what we call a subsector. So if you're a home textile company, or a sports and outdoor company, you will get that kind of peer-to-peer benchmarking with the average score of the companies within your subsector. You won't see, so Piping Hot won't see Patagonia's score, for example, unless the two companies decide to exchange information. And this is something exciting that we're starting to see happen. Just a sidebar there is that, transparency, opportunities to learn from a sharing perspective, it's certainly open for companies to be able to do with the mutual respect and agreement of each other. But all that is kind of in the experimental part. For now, you will get a confidential scorecard. It will come through the portal that Prina talked you through. We don't send anything over email or risk getting, into any other kind of ways of sharing information. That you have to log into your secure portal to get your information, and then that's available to share as you wish. If you're not a member of Textile Exchange, you will, as I said, everybody gets a scorecard. You'll get the standard scorecard, and for companies that are members, there'll be more of that granular information on outcomes, impacts, tracking that pathway to your climate pathway in terms of the intensity as well as the relative greenhouse gas emission factors that we measure. And I think Amy mentioned that is getting more sophisticated all the time as we start to kind of figure out how to display that best for you, make the scorecards interactive, and bring in more of that journey and that destination into infographics and data. So that's exciting. So a little bit of a plug for joining members. This is one of the many membership for Textile Exchange, one of the many benefits. And then we offer what we call a premium. It's not really a scorecard. It builds on top of either your standard or advanced scorecard. And this is where we can help you further with your customized needs. And this is a fee for service and takes you into gap analysis, to workshops, to presentations, to boards, to whatever you want to explore at that deeper, more customized level. So scorecards are really important, and we feel very proud of what we can give you here. This is obviously a static example of the scorecard. Once again, sort of visualizing what Amy and I were speaking about earlier, where you can track your year-on-year progress and that progress against your subsector or the wider industry. You'll see your rank, you'll see confidentially where you are, and once again, just to reinforce that message, this can be quite helpful. Okay, so we're here, the rest of the industry might be here, as in the case of maybe this example. But this is just a mock-up of different companies' information. It's nothing connected to any company. And then you'll see the sort of tracking of preferred volumes, overall volumes of materials, etc. So you can get that sense of progress. And then some of the impact and outcome data. And there's a scorecard guide that will talk you through what you're looking at visually. Then the other way we communicate information in more of the sort of public domain is this sort of family of information that is standalone in its own right, so to speak. So you can go into each or either of these tools. And I'll talk you through what the tools are in a second. And ideally, they work as a family of information. So the leaderboard is where individual companies proudly display their high-level results. This is voluntary. Nothing is compulsory, and I don't think there's not many things anyway that are. So you don't have to be in the leaderboard. We find most companies want to be or work towards being in this leaderboard because this is a way of showing transparency, role modeling for others, being prepared to sort of step up and out there. And I say this, and I know it kind of sounds a bit schmaltzy, but every company that makes the leaderboard is actually a leader. If you think about the relative few that we have captured, I mean, it feels like a lot, and there's some amazing companies in the leaderboard, but really there's many, many more companies that aren't in the leaderboard yet. So this is really a celebration and a name and fame. The impact dashboard, this takes the kind of, as we were saying before, the aggregate volumes that we can then model in terms of impact. It also, as you can see in the sort of screenshot here, just tracks we talked earlier about commitments and ambition and sort of being putting forward that ambition. So we track that level of ambition within the industry. And then you can have a look yourself if you haven't already. You can sort of go in and look at how the community of benchmarkers are doing around the different fibers and materials. Each one has its own page. And then that sector scorecard that I talked about before, all sort of working to give you different lenses on the program. And of course, the new insights report that I mentioned right back at the start of the journey today. This page I wanted to also just mention because there are lovely visuals. For those that know us well, we'll know that we've gone through a beautiful rebranding, which of course lends itself even more to some of the visuals that we create, the media and social assets and things like that. And you do get a badge. So ranging from anybody that is a participant can use the participant badge. And then, if you kind of make your way, as Prina was saying, into the full benchmark, which is a feat in itself, you can display that, the MCI, developing, establishing, maturing, leading option. So yeah, social assets, being able to communicate either through sustainability reports, annual reports, and other mechanisms. You're the creative ones out there to how you share this information, encourage others to join, is really exciting for us. We provide communication kits, etc., for you along the way. And I think on that note, I'm going to just check the chat box. No, I'm not. I'm going to check the Q&A. No, nothing in the Q&A. Please do. Now's another pivotal moment for a bit of a chat with us while you have us all together at the moment. It won't be the last time you'll see us all together. Valentina organises us really well, and being a Kiwi, I'll be here. But back to you, Prina, just to kind of this call to action now.
Thank you, Liesl. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening and for your patience. Once again, we know that there's a lot of information, but we will share this recording with all of you, all the registrants, and we are here for any help or support that you need. Here are a couple of call to actions. So to get started, please register. If you haven't already, log back into the secure portal. As you have the link there, we invite and encourage you to join the Hub community of companies creating material change, as it is called, to stay updated on all announcements, news, and resources related to the benchmark program. Once again, do check out our suite of guides to find complete guidance and information about our survey, methodology, and more. And we will be running our popular weekly drop-in clinics throughout July and August every Thursday. Join the safe space on Thursdays to ask your questions, share your experience, or provide your valuable feedback. We would love to host you. In the next slide. Last but not the least, I wanted to take a moment to thank my corporate benchmarking team here at Textile Exchange, who are working tirelessly behind the scene. And we are very, very keen and eager to support you throughout your benchmark journey. So please get in touch with us. Once again, thank you everyone for your time, and the floor is open for any questions that you may have.
Great, Prina. Valentina, you're here too. Let's have a look at the questions. I can see Anne has posted, will this workshop be available in the Hub? I think that's right. Yeah, we will be putting this recording up. We hope through the Australian Fashion Council and Mindful New Zealand that community along with Textile Exchange can continue to be your various communities, and we're all pretty much interconnected through the wonderful Valentina who's building many bridges here. anything to add, Valentina, from your specific side? Oh, you're on mute, I think.
Such a rookie error. Thank you so much, Lisa. I had my dog in the background barking, so I put myself on mute.
Get rid of those sheep. I think that's what he's barking at.
He looks like one, actually. Yeah, all of the recordings are generally you're able to find them on the hub. So if you haven't, or if your team haven't been able to join us here today, could you, please share that the recordings with them. And we also realized that it was very short notice in terms of getting this one up and running. So I really appreciate your patience with us as we work to kind of, extend some more of those timelines, but really appreciate you joining us here today. I had one question here. Liesl and Prina, this is for you. What are the dates the data focuses on? Is it for intake 2021, for example? So if we're looking at, I guess, you thinking about benchmarking, what date do you generally look at focusing on?
Prina, do you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. For the 2022 benchmark cycle, we generally what we see is companies do submit the data from the last year, that's 2021. Now, there are a couple options. There is the calendar year, there's a fiscal year, there's also like, we are not very specific about like a couple months here, a couple months there. There are a couple options, but generally, yes, we do look into the last year's data. Anything else to add to that, Lisa?
Just to say, it's really up to the company to identify the most pragmatic year. As Prina said, it's as long as it's the previous year from when you're benchmarking. So it is things that have happened, although we're trying to sort of front load a little bit more so that we can start giving companies sort of forecasting and predictive trends. This is one of our ambitions. So you are able to sort of forecast in various parts of the survey as well. But yes, it's looking back over that past year, whether it's your calendar year, whether it's your financial year, whether it's your buy-in year, whatever is most convenient for you. We don't want you to create a different set of data for us, but to summarize it, it usually is calendar year that companies do report. So good question. It's always one we get asked. And then, of course, when there's, and just sort of back to that efficiency measure, we do pre-fill. So once you get through that first messy year, as Amy said, when you return to your next year's survey, it will be pre-filled as much as possible with last year's responses. So if things have not changed at all for you, and sometimes, strategies are, you've made a big strategic jump and then things have kind of remained, or you've got your capacity teams in place and those questions or your answers to those questions don't change at all. You simply have to check the answer and refresh the save, and that bit's done. So we're looking increasingly at more efficiency measures. If information is in the public domain, and a link to that particular site is all you need. That's to some extent, apart from the volumetric data and the things that are very quite confidential to companies, that's to some extent, that's the goal of benchmarking, is how much is publicly shared. And we take that as, if you like, the highest form of evidence, because as a company, we're pretty sure you'd want to make sure that what you say in the public domain has been checked and vetted internally. So we kind of take it for granted that some of those steps that we need to check through our review process have been done by you to enable you to put that information in the public domain. Don't know if anyone else has got anything to say there. The questions are starting to dry up, and I think maybe it's starting to get a little late in Australia and New Zealand, and maybe we just bring Amy on if you're there and still with us, Amy, just to give you a big round of applause and a thank you for being such a champion. And I honestly couldn't have answered those questions better myself to promote what we do. So thank you for being such a champion for us all.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing more responses from the Oceania area, from our territory, so that we can benchmark what our results are together.
Exactly, that you're totally right. That opens up all sorts of opportunities for more of a regionalized kind of report card and driving that at a regional level. You've got Sweden to beat, guys. Sweden's our kind of, yeah, big region that's kind of leading the way if you arguably look at it in terms of numbers of companies participating and volume. So there you go, there's a challenge. Not that we're competitive, right?
Thank you so much, Liesl. And also Prana's just popped a link. If you're interested in starting the benchmark journey today, you can register with us there. If you're interested in joining membership in our region here, I've just popped my email address. Please don't hesitate to reach out. And also, yeah, thank you, Amy, Liesl, and Prana. Thank you so much for your time and taking all of the effort to organize this workshop here for the Oceania region. And Rose, thank you so much for convening us. As usual, early morning or late, very late at night for you. So thank you so much. And thank you so much to everyone that has joined.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Valentina.
Thank you to our speakers, and thank you for participating in today's workshop. As a friendly reminder, an email will be sent to all registered participants with a link to today's presentation. Also, be sure to go to the hub to continue the discussion and asking of questions. That concludes our webinar. Thank you. Goodbye.